Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan Morris, and I'm here with your host, Nick Smith. And from the backwoods of Tennessee in the blurry mountains is Paul Cardall. You can see Paul with his cup and his lumberjack shirt and his Mortal Kombat station behind him in the distant background. There it is.
Yeah, what?
Well, every day is a Mortal Kombat.
Yes.
Guys, we have run into technical issue after technical issue, and now we're just going to go with it. Even if
what do you do?
Paul is blurry. Oh, there he is. We're going to run with it because the message is more important than the visual. That's what we have to tell you because the visual is not working. And so,
the visual is also not interesting.
Yeah. It depends on the day. Paul, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for being on with us.
Hey, it's great to be with you guys. I'm excited about this entire show and Giants. I think, Nick, it's a brilliant concept. And, we've gotten to know each other for a couple months and really, really impressed with what you're doing and trying to help people recognize their value. And that's one thing, with Ryan here. Ryan knows all too well as well. So, yeah, good to be with you guys. Sorry if I'm blurry. It might be for the best. I try to get my driver's license like this so the policeman, if he ever pulls me over, lets me go. So
it's perfect, man. We like you, blurry. We'll take you any way we can get you, Paul. So I'm going to go through. You've got a story that I think is unique. Well, it is unique. I mean, you had an upbringing that was difficult from the beginning, and you've been able to work through that and create some amazing things in your life. And so I want to go back all the way to childhood and birth and development. Can you fill people in on what occurred for you in your life physically and with your family? Tell us what that was like for you.
I was born in Utah. Is this what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Solid.
However deep you want to go.
Tell us about your birth.
The challenges of cultural upbringing. And we're talking about my heart. Yeah. So I was born with a broken heart. Literally, I only had half a heart. And so I wasn't expected to live. And my parents have told the story time and time again, which has really been more of a way of teaching me and all my siblings how precious life is. We see so many people giving up, and yet I've fought my entire life to be here. And so I've had countless heart surgeries. I've been near death countless times. I've overcome many viruses. I've worn masks my entire life. So I'm glad everyone else has that opportunity. And so it's culminated in a life of constantly being reminded that I'm going to die, constantly being reminded that it's important how you live. And then as well, the challenge of surviving and adapting to who I was and coming to understand my value within society when I'm, picked last to play basketball, or I can't keep up with certain people. And so those are all little things that have helped to shape my character and given me the willpower to say, oh, yes, I can.
Amazing. So growing up, not only did you have half a heart, but you can't keep up with the kids. So you're kind of an outcast in a sense, right?
Yeah, I would, I think a lot of us that have chronic illnesses, we turn to humor.
Okay.
We try to laugh life off. And I would say I was a very facetious child that
and adult.
I enjoy a facetious life.
Yeah.
And I do take life very serious. I don't want to die ever.
Okay.
But I say that like not just somebody who's going, oh yeah, that's after retirement.
Yeah.
I say that every day, like, because now I've got a heart transplant, so I don't even have my own heart. I got somebody else's heart keeping me alive, and I've got immunosuppressant drugs, so my body doesn't reject it like it's a virus because it's somebody else's DNA. But it's a miracle. Doctors are raising people every day from the dead temporarily through organ donation. So I'm kind of a walking Lazarus.
Man.
And when I die, he's the first person I'm going to go talk to and ask him how many church talks he had to give.
And fires, right? Yeah. So you mentioned in your bio that getting a new heart was like realizing that you'd been driving an old beat up truck for your whole life, and then you're handed a Porsche. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever been, like feeling extremely out of shape, overweight, like you've been eating way too much. And then all of a sudden you go through this cleanse and this diet and you change your entire lifestyle, and all of a sudden you feel liberated and younger and free.
Yeah.
For those that have done that, I know, Ryan, you've been doing great, man. And you look fantastic. And I'm not alluding to what I said. That's you. But I think all of us, when we shred that, feel lighter. And so, having my old heart had been worked on so many times, was so deformed, so defective, and I had pacemaker leads in it. And after the transplant, I was actually able to hold my heart. I mean, I don't know how many people get to hold their heart. It's very disturbing. And you're holding your heart and you're looking at it and you're going, holy cow, how in the world did I live on this thing? Because that's the source of life. And the technicians that were around me was like, we have no idea. That's why we've got it, and we're going to study it and try to figure out how you survived all those years. But it was kind of like I had this beat up old truck, the truck that Grandpa drove that never died, that outlived Grandpa. And then you get that truck and, you're embarrassed to go on dates with it. Yeah. But then all of a sudden you're called in to drop the truck off, and they want to give you a different vehicle, and they hand you the keys to a Porsche.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
You're not afraid to get some dates now, but that right there is the transition. Imagine, for everyone that is like in their 40s or 50s, imagine
Paul's chest. His heart is right there.
That's
Easy, ladies.
Is that your screensaver, Ryan?
Yes.
Is that your screensaver?
I was going to
tell me I'm a centerfold, and
that's his background on his phone. I look at him like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But everybody has their thing.
It's real. But that's well, I'm a centerfold, and I got the staples to prove it. So
it's blurry.
No, that's a good.
It's a blurry scar.
Yeah. So music came in somewhere along the line. You have this new heart. When did you get your heart transplant?
September 9th, 2009. So a little over 10 years ago.
Okay. And so when you picked up music, that was way before all of this. So you were creating music before you had a whole heart, somebody else's heart, a new Porsche.
Yeah.
2009.
Yeah.
At 9 o'clock.
Wow.
My donor was 19 years old.
That's a lot of
there's a lot of strangeness revolving around 9. It just was a dramatic shift. But as far as music, I discovered music. I took piano lessons like most kids. I didn't last very long. My mother had 8 kids, and she can only enforce a couple of us. Yeah. And then I lasted 6 months But I went through some of my major open heart surgeries were at age 13 when I almost died. I was in the hospital a long time. I said goodbye to my family like I was going to die. And then I survived. And then I had to go back a year later for reconstructive surgery. And they opened my chest 3 more times. And I was so sick and tired of it that my dad was just like, hey, it's important that you fight and live. And, he always, and this leads to the music, he always would use my illness as a teaching tool to help understand Christianity, because Jesus suffered hanging on a cross, but he hung there until it was finished, until his work was finished. So he would use that analogy to me, and that motivated me, because the thought of a God suffering and dying. So I was drawn to that. But then what happened is, after I survived, I became close friends with a kid that played the piano really well. And he had a nice Beretta, a car. And he used to drive that thing pretty fast. And I thought, man, you're going to get in an accident the way you drive this car. It ends up he got into an auto pedestrian accident and was killed up Parley's Canyon, hit by a car. But he was a perfectly healthy person. And yet he died so sudden that I was like, what the heck is going on in this world? I fight my entire life. You get a whole army to pray. People are fasting, countless like blessings, with the religion. And it's like, why is one person, spending their entire life trying to survive when someone just dies randomly? And so I was kind of, with my faith in God at the time, I was like trying to understand God and why that happens. And I ended up going to the piano in my parents' living room, and I just sat down because he played, and I hit 3 notes. But those 3 notes that I hit was a melody, and it was so calming that I felt this cleansing, like, hey, don't worry about it. I got you. And I started creating melodies. And that was just my way of artistically expressing through that medium feelings I was having. And so I've always encouraged people to find something that is an outlet to help them soothe, whether it be writing books, poetry, art, music. Some people, go to the shooting range. Some people put on boxing gloves. Some people go to the gym. We need to find an outlet that allows us to understand the big picture. Because if we don't get that outlet, we are going to get anxious, which leads to depression, to mental illness, to suicide.
Paul, could that be somebody's purpose, that outlet? Do you see that as a purpose that they create? Because people talk about finding a purpose, and I don't think it's something you find. I think it's something you create. What do you think?
I think that's a very good statement, because I was once asked by a producer in Nashville who was a pretty religious guy. Like let me not use the word religion. He was a spiritual man who understood, like in Alcohol Anonymous, in the 12-step program, that step 3 is you need to let go and let God.
Right.
And that's a universal concept. So he asked me, are you driven or are you led?
Wow. Yeah.
And I was like, you're talking in parables right now. Am I driven or am I led? And I thought, well, I'm definitely driven to success. And he goes, when you decide to be led by a higher power than driven by your own will, you're going to see incredible things happen. And so the answer to your question is, I believe everybody has gifts, and those gifts are specific to our DNA, to who we are. We're unique individuals. That's the beauty. There's not one star in the sky that's the same. And I tend to think that every star that is the brightest, it's because they're using the gifts they have to light the world.
It's a parable of
And
the talents,
so,
right?
Yeah, I think so. The word talent to me, though, has always meant like an assignment or a calling or a service with the gifts you've been given. So I separate the two. A gift is just something you know how to do. Like people ride unicycles, people juggle, people paint, people. Yeah, he's a unicyclist.
Yeah.
so juggling life.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
How'd you guys know that? Keep going.
Are you? It's just all part of the process. Yeah. Ryan knows things.
Yeah.
He's your Oliver Cowdery. So, anyways, yeah. So, I mean, I think we find our purpose, but our purpose finds us. It's like music. You don't find music. Music finds you. There's a song that hits you that you hear on the radio, and it's like, I love that song, but somebody else it might not affect. Yeah. So you know, same with like books. Books, there are stories that resonate, you know, but you can create something you feel led to do. Like you have created this analogy that's incredible, where we need to be giants and not just these small-minded individuals. Small-minded individuals enclose themselves into a mindset that this is the only way. And that puts blinders on you, because when you get out of that mindset and you explore, you start to see that people are better than you. Not in the sense of what you're trying to accomplish, but, oh man, I was told my whole life that you have to be part of this club or this organization or this institution or this faith to have real value.
Right.
And so the thing I'm most grateful for is the ability post-transplant, and the ability with music is I get to travel, not inside a bubble for an organization, but I get to travel just as me.
Right.
We live in a bubble?
Just as me, and really, what?
I said we live in a bubble? Is that like a Utah bubble?
No, I think like I'm in a bubble right now. I'm in a cabin. And if I just stay in this cabin, and you know, I live in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah.
In Nashville, there's a mindset. So that's about. I'm saying if you stay in one place, it doesn't matter where you're born, where you're from.
No, Paul.
Everyone wants to go to Utah because it's gorgeous. It's beautiful.
So there's in my book, The Art of Accomplishment, I wrote about bubble perspectives and how we have this point of view that we live into, and it's all we can see. And we go out there and we're like, this is the way it is. There's no other way. This is my point of view and I'm right. And then we bump into somebody and we have a chance to hear it from another view. And sometimes people will say things like, yeah, that's not for me. Sorry, I've got my point of view. I'm in my bubble. When they could open up and say, oh, wow, that's cool. I want to bring that into my bubble and expand it. And so I get what you're saying on a metaphor level. It's this idea that we have this way of being that has us stay small. I love it.
Yeah, and
more thoughts.
I agree with you. I agree with you. There are, because of majority of people that I am in circles with are Christians, even though a large portion of my audience is Islamic. A lot of people in India and in the Middle East are a lot of Hindus listening to my music. But in the frame of where I was raised, everything is Christianity. And so it's interesting because Jesus was the one that said, I'm going to Samaria, and they all thought he was crazy to go outside the bubble.
Yeah.
And he convinced people, you don't want to stay in that bubble. You want to go out and explore and meet other people who are of incredible value that can bring so much substance to your life and enrich you with so much more than just staying put, just staying on the farm, just staying, small town minded in a big world that's actually very small.
You hit something earlier. I want to pull it back. So you said there's so many stars in the sky and they're all different. No two stars are the same. And what I want to highlight is not the star, but the darkness, because the darkness allows the star to shine bright, right? And people often avoid their darkness. And can you speak to that a little bit of going through the darkness to build your light, in a sense?
Yeah, and I love that analogy because I think I've been using this other analogy of moths and butterflies.
Okay.
Everybody always wants to see a butterfly. They're so beautiful. The monarchs, everything. And yet people don't recognize the moths. The moths and butterflies are very similar. The only difference is the moth, they eat at night, but they are overly obsessed with the light. You've seen them just attack the light because they love it so much, but that's because they know the darkness. Butterflies just kind of, la 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 la, no, but they're not thinking about anything except I'm beautiful and the flowers love me. Yeah. So, but a moth, like a star, is all that darkness. You need that. And C.S. Lewis, in his book, A Grief Observed, which he first wrote with an alias because he didn't want people to know his real thoughts and real thinking, because he had really promoted Christianity to the point where everyone thought he was totally enlightened and like a prophet. And then he marries this woman in the hospital who has cancer, and she dies before they even have a honeymoon. And he says, you cannot know love unless you know pain. You can't know light without the darkness. And in A Grief Observed, he says, every time I try to get my pain resolved, it's like knocking on God's door, only to have him open it up and slam it in my face.
Yeah, wow.
And he asks this question, why do I feel these things when I go to God and I'm trying to understand my own being? And he says, sometimes God just wants us to grow up. Wants us to recognize that we are valuable enough to take on some of these things like he would, with his help, his guidance, but we need to go through these things in order to achieve great stuff.
Hey, that's in the book.
When you're hiking a mountain. It's like when you're hiking a mountain, you're looking at the switchbacks going, this is bull crap. I don't want to do this. But you don't say it to anybody because you're on a hike and it's cool.
Switchback is bull.
They're like, Dad, this is
like
bull.
A switchback.
Yeah, I'll bleep that.
Dad.
This sucks.
Yeah. But then when you get up higher, you're looking back and you're like, oh my gosh, how do we get up this high?
Yeah.
Have you been to Zion's National Park, and they've got the Walters Wiggles going up to Angel's Landing? And I remember doing that when I was 12, 13 years old and looking up at that thing and going, yeah, right. And there was a bunch of us that just
it's the one where the pioneers went up.
Yeah, right. It was probably. And we get up to the top looking down Angel's Landing, and everything was worth that climb. Everything. The view was amazing.
I think that's a great analogy on both ends. The moth chasing the darkness, or the light because it knows the darkness, the zigzags to get the view. Like, we've all been through it, and we'll probably go through it for a long time through life. Life doesn't necessarily get easier when you start seeing success. It just means you got more to do. It's like, it's amazing. Paul,
the great thing is,
yeah, go ahead.
The great thing is we are actually in control, in some sense, because we can choose to be guided, or we can choose to just make our own decisions. pretty soon you get to a point where you're like, oh my gosh, my brain cannot manage this. And you do need that higher power. You need a source of some kind that's going to help you. But once you find that source, you got to really not push it on other people. You need to make that your own personal boss.
I like that. What would you say to somebody that doesn't believe in a higher power, like a God? Maybe somebody that's atheist, like, is there still a way for them to create that higher source, that higher power, in a sense?
There's a great conversation between two atheists.
Okay.
Ricky Gervais and Russell Brand.
Yeah. Okay.
Russell Brand, who is now no longer an atheist because he has surrendered in humility, knowing that though he doesn't credit any particular God, he credits the universe as a much bigger deal than him. And he is now over 8 years of fighting the idea of believing in God, to where now he's like, somebody is running the show. And he has this very powerful interview with Ricky Gervais, and Ricky Gervais tries to explain how if you have God, you're more miserable because now you feel pressure. And then if you don't have God, then you're liberated and you're free. And they go back and forth and they argue a little bit. So if you want to see something really interesting, it's Russell Brand's podcast interviewing Ricky Gervais. But for me, if somebody doesn't believe in God or is agnostic or not sure,
right,
go get on an operating table. Have your chest cut wide open. Wake up in the middle of it and think to yourself, oh, this is it. That's all there is. That's the most depressing thought in the world. You'll never see your kids again. You'll never see anyone else again. It's nothing. Living like that makes no sense to me. Even if God's not a reality, it just doesn't make any sense to me to live your life without knowing there's something greater out there. You don't have to obsess over figuring out what that is, but just recognize that you're part of something really big and beautiful. Because if you don't, you cave into this me against everybody else instead of us against everything else.
Right. Man, I'm going to read.
I just can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just pulling in, like, there's this ideal that we need to have a higher version of ourselves, whether that's with a God or with ourselves or however that looks, that we can grow into. And that's kind of the method of this story, is that you have this potential that you want to live into, your wiser self. You know, in psychology, they say your wise self. And then you have your small self that you play, sometimes play into that, but you want to close the gap and not bring your higher self down, but bring your small self up to that giant potential. And so,
yeah.
Go ahead. You had a thought there.
I think that if you don't believe in God, make love your God. Because love is like a vacuum. It counters gravity. It sucks you up into this higher level of living.
Yeah.
And it leads you on a path that is defiant to all truth. And you're a lot more liberated and a lot more free. You're not pissed off all the time. And so you can say who's the God of love, or love is the God. And I think if you don't want to believe in God and you struggle with that, make love your God. And I actually think that's harder.
Yeah, I like that. Because people tend to live either in fear or love, and they're both emotions, and one's positive and growing and the other is shrinking and diminishing. And yeah, it is hard to live into love because fear is so powerful. We see it in the world right now. It's so powerful. And sometimes it takes more love to offset. Go ahead.
Well, that's how you get controlled.
Yeah.
Fear. Fear is the enemy. Any organization that puts fear into you, you shouldn't be part of that organization.
So do you feel afraid?
The only thing I'm afraid of is not having enough time with my family. That's it. I'm not afraid of death. I'm not afraid of things I believe in not being true, because those things I believe in have shaped my life and gotten me to where I am today.
Yeah.
So, a friend of mine who's actually writing a novel, The Broken Miracle, based on my life, wrote this the other day. His name is JD Neto, and grew up in Brazil in a mega church evangelical organization. And he left the church that he grew up in because he felt restricted to be his greatest potential. And he wrote this the other day, and I think it's very interesting.
Okay.
He says, I'm fascinated by people who hide behind a religion as an excuse for their behavior. If you're going to believe in something, read it, study it, and then announce it to the world. And when you finally decide where your coin has landed, study the good and bad behind the things you believe. There's a God and an opposition in every belief system. Know them well. Learn the white, the black, and the gray behind the system you're part of. And if you feel like you don't fit in the mold, then go on your own journey and make up your own mind. But for the love of God, believe in something out of your own experiences, not because someone told you to. And I think that's so profound, because we need to find a system that's going to bring us joy and happiness. And if one system is not providing that, investigate other systems.
Man, we could end the show right there. That is amazing. No, that is the most.
God forbid. We love investigators, but God forbid we investigate anything else.
Yeah.
But I think it's important that we do, to refine who we are,
Yeah.
where we came from, where we're going, and our role in this world.
Paul, are you good on time? It's been 30 minutes, and I know that
I'm great.
Your day a little bit. If you're good, can we go a little bit longer?
Yeah.
So I won't drag it out too long. What I just want to say, based on what JD Neto just said, is like we all have to find our own giant journey, that there are all kinds of stars in the sky. They don't all look the same, that we have different paths that we're going to take. There's going to be dark times and good times. And my question to you is, going back to yourself in the beginning, what would you say to yourself if you could go back in time? One piece of advice.
Well, I'd make sure we'd have the flux capacitor, because that was a nightmare trying to get the lightning.
Yeah.
Let's see, if I were to go back in time. Great Scott.
Great Scott.
That's a hard question. I don't know that I want to. I don't know that I'd want to. Because if I knew what I know now, I wouldn't have made choices to lead me to where I am now. Yeah. And I could easily say, oh my gosh, I could prevent so much pain. I could warn my sister about her son that would drown. I could go back and save my brother's life, who died while I was waiting for a heart. I could go back and do all these things, but all that stuff has been fuel to bring my family closer together.
Wow, yeah.
And so these lives that we've lost, and that's where my mind usually goes, is if I went back in time, I'd try to stop the death. But then I see my sister-in-law now, or my sister-in-law, who was a widow, now married, and her kids in a beautiful environment, in a beautiful situation. I think about my divorce. My kids have a much more beautiful, enriching life as a result, because they now have these siblings that they love and cherish. They never thought they'd have a brother, and we, in my first marriage, lost some twin boys. So now my kids have brothers, my daughters. So it's one of those, like, do I want to mess with the past? Do I want to even dwell? And we dwell on it. We already, don't you think we go back in time all the time anyways?
Too much in our
minds.
Yep.
Yeah, we do.
It's so dangerous. It's dangerous.
Well, what I hear in your message, though, is trust the path that you're on, that what you're going through is going to help you become the person that you're capable of. I wouldn't change anything in my world either. I wouldn't be where I am today on this call with you if I had changed getting divorced. If that hadn't happened, I don't think we'd be on this call today, because I wouldn't have pushed on the book. Like, there's a gratitude that comes from recognizing that those difficult things are part of your journey, and they're going to help you to grow into the person you're capable of.
Absolutely. Because, like in my divorce situation, I hate the word ex. My ex lives in Texas, literally. All my exes live in Texas. So she's an amazing woman, and we're good friends. And she always wanted what she's got.
Yeah. Okay.
And I couldn't give that to her as an artist. And yet my wife, who I'm married to now, is a freaking rock star. She's Slovenian. We joke, because she's Slovenian, she's strong like bull. But she, and she's older than me. She's never had kids, but she's such a health nut that because of my anatomy and my problems, she's keeping me alive, and she's at an incredible state. But she was in New York on 9/11. It led to her marriage falling apart, and she was looking for 7 years, asking God, and she had a list of 100 things she wanted. And then when we met, there was just one thing on there that I didn't have, that I now have, because she trains me like a puppy. But
what is that one thing, Paul? I'm dying to know. Is this bad?
Well,
just
tidiness.
Yeah.
Just picking up after yourself. That's all.
Yeah.
I don't have servants like you, Ryan. So
yeah, right. I trained an army of kids.
Yeah, see, my kids are in Texas. But so that's the scenario. And so my daughter says to me about a month ago, Dad, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I'm really glad about what happened. And I don't know if that's her trying to, process everything, but she literally is thinking as a 14-year-old how good it is.
Yeah.
Where she's at, what she's got. And she's like, Dad, thank you for going through hell to do what you did to give us what we have. It takes two to tango, obviously, but but sometimes the universe, God, breaks things. And for those that go, oh yeah, he doesn't break up marriages. He also doesn't tell prophets to cut the head off of people, or chop the arms off people, or take more wives. So nobody can really argue or say what God tells a person to do. And I'm not saying God told me. I'm just saying we create these ideas that we know what's best for other people, and we get too busy thinking about other people, and we should be focused on our own challenges and problems.
Yeah. Paul, if you could give one piece of advice as we wrap up to somebody that wants to go down the Giants path, that's starting to wake up to their potential, what would you say to them?
That's really difficult, because I think for me, it goes back to learning from my wife, Tina, to let go of things that really don't matter. Try not to control everything. Don't make lists.
Wow. Yeah.
Stop making lists. People get up in the morning and they make these lists. And what they need to do in the morning is list out what they're grateful for. And then you start the day with a better attitude. And then at the end of the night, you can return and report to your spouse, to God, to whoever, what you accomplished that day, in an attitude of gratitude. So I think it's just a matter of recognizing that life is very challenging, but it's easier when we don't try to control it.
Yeah. So you hit, okay. So you hit on, we have some control in a sense, right? But life is easier when you don't try to control it. So we have the choice to control it. But when you try and control it, it can get pretty messy. I've seen that firsthand. It can get pretty messy. And so letting go and trusting and being grateful that it's going the way that it is really opens you up to do more. It's a weird dynamic.
I wrote on that the other day too about perspective and looking up at the dandelion puff and the light. You know, some people see the dandelion. Some people see the dandelion as a weed, as an annoyance. I do. I don't love the dandelion. It's not my favorite thing in the world when it's on my lawn. But you know, it's a bee's first food, right? You can look at it a whole different way when it changes to a dandelion puff. That National Geographic photographer was like, oh dang, I missed the beauty of the field of yellow dandelions, but there was puffs, the dandelion puffs everywhere. So he changed his view and he put the dandelion puff in the sunlight, and it made this beautiful image. And I think if we can wake up with an attitude of gratitude and start living down that path, it changes our whole perspective. It changes everything. That's a beautiful thing, Paul.
Yeah, I like that. I like that analogy of the dandelions. Very interesting. You took me back to my childhood. Mama had a baby and its head popped off. Remember that? Popped those off. They were all over in the grass in our home in Utah. But no, I agree with you. See, people see the beauty in one thing, but they don't see it in others. You know, because we're so judgmental, we're so concerned about protecting our bubble, and we need to burst that bubble. So
I think that's a great way to look at it. Is you see the world a certain way. As we wrap up, you see the world a certain way. Be open to the idea that the way you're seeing it isn't the way it has to be. Like, it could be so much more. And if you'll open up that bubble and start seeing not only your potential, but all the possibilities that are around you, you can start to choose from those and bring them into your space and grow. And so, Paul, I really appreciate you. Ryan, I know we're big fans of you as a human. I mean, your music is great, but you're better. Like, you're amazing.
Yeah.
As a person. And so thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I had one last thought. I was thinking about our minds, and a couple books that, you know, have always intrigued me is The Power of Intention by Wayne Dyer. I was very skeptical in the beginning, going, oh, I just need the Holy Spirit to guide me. But the reality is the Holy Spirit wants you to make good choices. And Wayne Dyer allows you to change the way you think, you know, and then there's a book, you know, The Secret, obviously.
Yeah.
And now it's called The Flow. You get in the flow. You change your mindset. As a man thinketh. So instead of going, oh man, I'll never be able to accomplish this, you start saying, wouldn't it be nice? And you just put that out there. And Tony Robbins is good at this, all these motivational guys, because they get it. When you start to put stuff out there of, you know, hey, it would be nice to do this and this and this, things happen. Things happen. And I could go on and on about miracles. Even like a year ago, my wife, we went to this award show called the Gospel Music Association's Dove Awards. I'm from Utah. People think of me as a Latter-day Saint musician, and I'm there in the South, and I got anyways, my wife, we're sitting there, she goes, wouldn't it be nice if you got a Dove Award? And I said, I'm LDS. They're not going to give me one of those. She goes, wouldn't it be nice? And she goes, you got to change the way you think. I said, okay, wouldn't it be nice? And then a year later, I went up on the stage and accepted the award for instrumental album of the year as the first Latter-day Saint. Now I go to a lot of churches. I attend a lot of different churches because I'm not in my bubble. I like to find things wherever I can. But I cherish and love my childhood faith. But that's the thing. That is like, if you know music and you know the contention of the past, which is dying, which is no longer there because people are more focused on goodness now and not who believes what. And so it was just a miracle. But that's one example, and I could go on and on and on of examples. So I encourage everybody to really study the formula that Nick has created here, that Ryan's helping him with. We are all giants within us. We have that amazing potential to become who we were born to be.
I love that. And it sounds like
there's my endorsement.
Yeah, hey, thank you. That was strong like bull.
That's the secret.
Will you demo him real quick?
Yeah, I got you. Don't worry. Hold on a second. Ching. Paul, it sounds like that there might be a part due where we get you out of the backwoods of Tennessee and the mountains and the unblurriness, and maybe we can play Mortal Kombat or see your face closer at some point in time. But we sure appreciate your time. Tell us real quick some of the things that you've got going on as well, and also about your book and when we can get a copy and all that stuff.
Yeah, for people that are interested in getting some really comforting music, you're having trouble sleeping, you got anxiety, listen to my music. Ask Alexa and Siri about me.
Peaceful Piano, right? Beautiful stuff.
Yeah, Peaceful Piano. It was nominated for Classical Album of the Year. And then I've got a podcast that's about to launch through the American Songwriter Network called All Heart. So y'all just come over to my website, subscribe, paulcardall.com. When you subscribe, I've got a free song that is sent right to your email. And I like to give away stuff that you can't get anywhere else. So yeah, become All Heart, be a giant, and subscribe at paulcardall.com.
Did I spell that right?
Thanks for throwing that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
People say it Cardall, whatever. Subscribe.
Well, thanks for being on. To all the giants watching this and those that are growing, thank you for being a part of this show. Remember to join us on giantsandsmalls.com and check out Paul Cardall's music and his book that's coming out. He's got a lot going, his podcast. And man, we'll see you on the next episode. And thanks for being patient with us through the technology. Thank you, Zoom, for having us switch over to something even better. So
thank you, Paul.
Make it a giant day.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Take care.
Peace out.